India has 800 species of seaweed. All of them are currently edible. I run The Good Ocean, which is India's first seaweed food company, where we wild harvest local seaweed and we sell it to chefs across the country. We generally bulk harvest one species, which is sargassum. It's the most abundant species available and we are able to supply it to restaurants more consistently. I often get asked by the fishing community what I'm doing. A lot of people think I'm coming to the tide pools to harvest mussels or oysters. And then I have to just tell people that, I'm not really interested in mussels and oysters. I'm here for the seaweed. And have you tried it? It tastes fantastic. Like, why don't you try some? And I always get very strange looks.
We've recce'd this beach a bunch of times. We found it to be actually probably some of the best biodiversity when it comes to tide pools in Goa. Not only is there a substantial amount of sargassum, but it tends to be really, really healthy.
And I think since chef wants to do the seaweed caviar, it would be really cool if we could find some prawns that have more ebladders.
Yeah.
So I got my mask and my snorkel. Even though this is a shallow harvest, I'm going to need it at some point to be able to look underwater and identify the seaweed species. So I'm going to find a pathway to the seaweed that's safe, figure out a way in which chef can come in as well and harvest the seaweed with me.
Seafood is a big part of our cuisine throughout the country, but we don't really have seaweed in our traditional food. Honestly, till a couple of years ago, I didn't think it was even available. I stumbled upon Gabriella on Instagram. We're looking to do a lot of different things with it to kind of get it in the mainstay and an everyday Indian meal.
In general, seaweed has a root-like structure called a holdfast, which anchors onto a rock and then it grows upwards. So what that means is you have to free dive right to the bottom and then be really careful as to how you harvest it, bring it up to the surface and then put it in a net bag and bring it back to shore. So that means that we have to keep going down quite often, which is a bit tiring. The tide is coming in really fast, so it's a little difficult. Yeah. And so while it is a really lovely skill to have, it doesn't take away from the fact that for many, many coastal communities who rely on this as their main livelihood, it's a really hard job that they just don't get paid enough money to do. So we've just finished our harvest for the day. This one is Spatoglossum. It's a raw mango seaweed, a delicious seaweed because it has a really distinct flavor unlike any other species. One thing that we really want to make sure with the Spatoglossum is that we put it in seawater to make sure that it doesn't change its color and then change its flavor. So we're going to just keep this in here and make sure that it stays cool. Here we've got sort of a slightly different species of sargassum than we normally use. It's got very thin fronds and the air bladders are quite slim. And so these are two different species of sargassum. This one is of course the sea grapes, which are slightly different. These are very beautiful.
Really, it looks like mushrooms.
Yeah.
To be very honest, like if you see it from here also, like it does look like mushrooms.
This one is Padina and this is essentially more of a bitter flavor profile, but the texture is really, really interesting.
We've used this before.
We've done the seaweed salad with it, yeah. And then this is Dictyota. You can identify it because it's like got digitate like seaweed, so it's got finger like seaweed. Quite like
super bitter.
Distinctly bitter, yeah. There are two of us that work at The Good Ocean. It's myself and Chaitanya. I handle essentially the ecological side of things. So I'm an expert in seaweed and I understand the coastal ecosystem. And Chaitanya handles operations. And because of him, we have this functional product that is food safe. And I think that's really important when it comes to setting all of our quality controls.
This is our processing unit and this is Shobha. She's been working with us for a couple of years now. She's the backbone of our processing unit. We would never be able to get any of the stuff we get done without her. So this is probably the most intensive part of our process. We are going to go through every piece of seaweed by hand and no seaweed is going to end up in a bag until it has passed through one of our three hands.
So essentially what we want to do when we sort the seaweed is to remove any kind of impurities that we see on it, like a tiny shell of some sort or sand or anything that could be wedged in the seaweed. There are also sometimes a little bit of microplastics or shreds of plastic fiber that you find in the ocean now because the ocean is just so full of plastic. We also weigh all of the waste product that we generate from after sorting. None of our seaweed goes to waste. We make it into a powder and we sell it as a biofertilizer. I'm really excited to check this Spatoglossum. Oh my god, it stayed. That's amazing.
That's a win. Ambecha flavor I Alag hai. Ambecha flavor na? Kairicha flavor. Fantastic.
So that's what it takes. Pour
Ice
water.
and water.
Guys,
Okay,
this is
I'm
like
really
a
glad.
big deal.
We've been trying to figure this out for 2 years.
Well done.
Seaweed's going in for the first wash. And in the meantime, I'm going to put salt in the other wash. Our saltwater wash, it's very important for us to get the saltwater content right. This is going to give us enough of a clean salt equivalent to the ocean for us to put the salt content back in the seaweed after we wash in fresh water. The first time is exciting. The second time feels like a challenge to do better than the first time. The 25th time is not fun. Anything you eat, somebody has probably done back-breaking, repetitive, boring, smelly, messy labor to get that onto your plate.
I mean, that is also why seaweed is expensive. It's
Yeah.
really hard to harvest or farm, and it's really painstaking work, and it really needs a lot of attention to detail.
Now that Shobha's done with the freshwater wash, I'm going to try and catch as much of this caviar as possible. As part of the washing process, the air bladders are going to fall off and we're going to try and get them in this sieve. This is one of our proudest achievements, I think. Came to us on a 2 a.m. cleaning session when it was all floating at the top. We had a conversation with Varun and yeah, seaweed caviar was born. When we first started, we actually made a big mat and just laid it out. It sticks to the rack. It cracks when we take it off. We end up with a lot of wastage. So we settled on this idea of making these little nests, and that allows us to lift it off later.
The number of times we've had to be up almost all night doing this is problematic. But it's also been really fun. And I think at some point in time you zone out. It is actually quite enjoyable.
This is our drying room. Here it's been drying for 2 days. The process starts with us pulling all the seaweed off the racks to get a final idea of how much dried seaweed we've got. So our last batch came in at 975 grams. Just gonna log that. We're now gonna divvy this up into bags. So the goal here for Shobha is to get the seaweed as flat as possible, and we're going to vacuum it. This keeps the moisture out, it keeps the pack small, helps us ship, keeps the shelf life high, keeps the seaweed fresh. And that's our final packed seaweed. This is what's going to go to Masque.
This is our version of pani puri. Puri means the shell and pani means the broth. So pani puri is supposed to be like a hard and crispy shell with a cold, refreshing, slightly spicy water inside. So when you eat it, it has to be one bite. It's a burst of flavors in your mouth. Honestly, a good puri should be almost like tasteless because there's so much flavor in the pani and in the filling. The puri is more of like a vehicle to get flavor into your mouth rather than to have its own flavor. This is our sea bass. We're just going to cure it with the seaweed that we've just caught. Usually in India, we don't really eat anything raw, medium rare or things like that. But obviously now, with time and with new restaurants that are coming up, things like crudo, sushi, all of this is becoming more acceptable for the average Indian guest. We will just roughly crush this and make a bed for it almost. So the idea is to fully cover the fish, almost like bury it in the seaweed. The salt in the seaweed kind of draws out all the moisture. So here's our fish that we've cured for overnight. It's almost like you've dry brined the fish in the seaweed. The process of curing it has made it more firm and dry, which gives you a better bite at the end. What we're going to do is marinate it with a little bit of sesame oil that's infused with habanero chili. Add a little touch of salt. What I'm going to add right now is different textures. This one is called ampapad. It's a very traditional mango candy almost, pickled watermelon radish, raw mango. This is essentially a very big part of chaat because that's what gives it the very sour sensation, chewy beetroot. This is a jelly made with sea buckthorn. It is the same fruit that we're going to use to make the pani or the broth. And lastly, we're going to use the 2 seaweed that we kind of caught. We also got some that were pickled in vinegar. So we're going to use that, the sea caviar, as a final garnish to this dish. So now we're going to put the pani puri together. We make a hole in this. And the idea is to get a little bit of everything in there. Fill it with water or pani till the brim and then go for it. On the streets, a guy would have 2 big tumblers of water. They would make it for you and keep putting a filled one into your bowl, and then you got to eat it one bite before he's ready with the next one.
Considering that most people find what I do interesting but strange, and they're willing to talk to me about it, but when it comes to tasting the seaweed, there's usually some sense of apprehension. I think chefs play a huge role in being able to generate curiosity, but also translate that into people actually eating the product.
I definitely wanted to use seaweed, and particularly this Indian seaweed that nobody really heard of it as an Indian ingredient. So we wanted to kind of change that perception, use it in a way where Indians are able to connect with it. So that's why we chose a dish like chaat. Chaat literally means to lick. It is basically food that makes you salivate. It is sweet, spicy, sour, textural all at the same time. Because we're going for a bhel inspired dish, which is usually made with puffed rice. We chose to use seaweed and ponk. So what we're trying to do here is we're going to fry all of this seaweed to make it a very crispy texture. Now what we're going to do is we're going to season it with chaat masala. Chaat masala is like this spice mix. For me, it's like Indian umami. Just give it a nice mix. Ready to go. So this is the other ingredient we use called ponk. It is basically fresh green sorghum. When this starts growing and they see this in the farm, it means harvest season is upon us, and it's almost like a celebration for the farmers. We're again going to season it with this chaat masala generously. So we're going to do some diced onions, some diced radish, green mango or raw mango. We marinated with a chutney that's made with green apple, mint, coriander, ginger. A little bit of the salad goes at the bottom. Tamarind chutney. Top it up with the crispy ponk that we've already seasoned. And then lastly, the seaweed. I would always ask the guest to taste it by itself, get a feel of the crispy seaweed, the ponk by itself, and then kind of mix it up like chaat. So you get all the different textures and all the different flavors in each bite. So we're going to put your next dish together, which is going to be chai and papad. Papad is basically like a crisp that goes with all our food in India. Usually it's made with like flour and lentils, but this one we've made with tapioca starch and seaweed. What we have here is a light broth of some vegetable trim from the kitchen and some seaweed, and we're going to infuse a lot more seaweed into it. While that's infusing, we're going to put a salad together. We have some of the beautiful raw mango seaweed. We're going to take a little bit of the sargassum. This is the padina or the sea fan. This we will just use a little bit of it. Although it has a nice flavor, it is slight on the bitter side. Break a nice piece of this that we can use. We're going to marinate this with a little bit of our vinaigrette. This is essentially coriander oil and a little bit of salt. And a nice bunch of all the seaweed mixed. So this is a little sour cream just to introduce a little bit of sourness, as everything is very rich. I'm going to top it up with some jicama, which is a fresh vegetable, a root vegetable, to give some sweetness and to break away from all the richness and the saltiness that we have. And lastly is the seaweed caviar. What I like about Good Ocean is it's a lot of back and forth and exchange of knowledge between the two of us. It's always about exchange of ideas and being open.
That's what the team at Masque does so well, is they really celebrate the ingredient and talk about where it comes from and take you on that journey back to the tide pools. I personally am really attached to these ecosystems. I get a lot of joy from spending time in them. They're also hugely important to oceanic ecosystems. They're fish breeding and feeding grounds. Whenever you're in a seaweed forest, you'll realize that there's this huge diversity of species that rely on these seaweed forests. I spent a lot of my time before this working in the conservation sector. Here, I just feel like I am able to do something with my hands and make a difference. I just really believe in seaweed, actually. I'm really obsessed with it.